It's largely based in the 1970s because that's when I grew up. And I just tried to capture little snippets of Leeds. Now, the coming out as a Bowie fan came about when I was about, I don't know, 13, 14. I started wearing girly clothes, sort of, I'd go to jumble sales and stuff and get women's blouses that I thought were cool and wrap a thing around it, or wear big white fur coats, and started wearing full makeup. Now, one of the reasons why I ended up writing it was because I got to a certain age and went, what on earth were you doing going out into Leeds at that time? Because I grew up in East Leeds. So, you know, I'd be going into town through Holton Moor, Gibson, you know, East End Park, all those sorts of places. But I'd get dressed up and I'd go to places like Seacroft, Winmore. You know, I've got the staging post up in Winmore without even thinking about it. Now, when I first sort of made that decision to do that, I was alone. It was a risk. I lost friends, you know, people just, I'd have, like, my best mates would just go, fuck off, I'm not going, just, you know, I first did it when I went up to a youth club and I covered my hair and my face in grease paint, spiked up my hair, sprayed it silver, put like a little ziggy. First, the only time I did anything that was specifically referenced Bowie, but I was young. So I ended up sort of adapting it into, trying to adapt it into your own look, because that's what was important. I found that punks absolutely loved it, and they kind of looked after me and sort of protected me a little bit.
It did inspire me to write the book, Promised Land, which is about...
Oh, you never told me that.
Well, it is in the acknowledgements or somewhere along the line that things like your book and also David Peace and, not more importantly, but the people who we both love.
Because Leeds has always had a tradition of writing. You know, I found a philosopher from 1749, his most famous book he wrote, from Armley, and part of his philosophy basically was evolution, sort of 90 years before Charles Darwin was even born. And he had a huge effect on Charles Darwin's granddad, and went on to sort of inform, which obviously goes on to inform everything Charles Darwin did. But 19th century, I've written a bit about sort of 19th century social writers that did all sorts of, they just took on race, they took on gender, they took on, you know, the rights of children, they took on, and there's like 5 or 6 of them all writing in the 19th century that were really just messing things up and changing things. I mean, you know, there's this history of writers that we just don't know anything about. I mean, do you think maybe I should read some?
I think this is a good time to, as a segue into Mick reading a little bit from his great book, whose title I just forgot. But what's the title again?
Something about Bowie and Leeds or something.
Coming out as a Bowie fan in Leeds, Yorkshire, England.
But I'm going to read from a section when I was a little bit older, and it's about the Adelphi, because there used to, really sensible thing to do on a Friday night. They'd have the NF meeting downstairs, and then all those sort of Bowie fans and all that really upstairs, which was a lovely little mixture. And there'd be some interesting encounters in the toilets and stuff like that I wrote about in here, but I'm not going to read from that.
No
right,
swearing.
so this is going at the Adelphi, sorry?
No swearing.
There's loads of swearing in it, obviously. Also, there's drug taking, but I was young. So this is going to the Adelphi. This is probably I was slightly older, but still sort of really sort of effeminate, girly clothes, makeup and all that sort of stuff. Sat on the bus going into town, mushrooms kicking in, wine fruity, cheap, German and glorious. Every drop saved at the back of my throat. I was way too early. What had happened? Some weird time-space blip had warped through my dimension. Either that or my hair and makeup had gone really well first time. Whatever the cause, I was on the bus to town 45 minutes early. No matter. I'll go straight to the Adelphi. It should be opening by the time I arrive. Floating in mid-air past the rotting carcasses of the dead dream that is Quarry Hill Flats. Hitler's nerve centre, the perfect place to exercise and impose the fascist control. Grimmer than an NF rally, now stank of battered 1945 Berlin. I was elsewhere, other dimension and all the way to the Adelphi, through lovely slimy streets, dirt marbling the buildings, water racing down glass, and spot ringing from the centre of black puddles. The covered market stalls like kayaks sheltering in a harbour. To keep the rain off, perfect hair. My coat was held above my head like a hang glider. Cruising just above the ground, I soared through the space. Tonight I was elemental, part of everything, balanced and attuned to forces, more sparking with life than lightning crashing against steel. Entering the pub, I could see the flashing lights upstairs and hear the dull thud backbeat of Adelphi music. Cool, it's open. I was relishing the thought of sitting on my own and drifting to the music in the empty room. No need to talk, just fly. There was no one on the door, but the DJ with a Groom David Live look came down and took my money. There was no one working the bar, so I went downstairs and got myself a double vodka and orange. The almost open plan pub was friendly, friendly, friendly. I glided back up the stairs, dabbing my wet puppy dog nose with my coat. Rounding the corner into the main room, it was empty. Well, empty, except for a table full of skinheads, leaning back in chairs, legs akimbo, crotches thrust into the air. Maybe where they lived, that was the perfect courting display. That was okay, I didn't know them, so I could still float around the room a while uninterrupted. I sat a few tables away, sucking the vodka through my teeth. Felt it warm my throat and down into my chest. I wish they'd stop staring at me. I want to close my eyes, watch the lights and the slow gliding few cell organisms that live behind the lids. They started saying things at me, in slightly raised voices. It was just an incoherent, low buzz, pure noise. This was my space and I was comfortable. Cigarette butts started to float through the air. There was no gravity. One lit and quicker than the others due to its flipped takeoff, spun towards my shoulder. I dipped from the waist just before impact, hardly any movement, and it hurtled off into space. This dodge seemed to really piss them off. An ashtray was just about to hit the bridge of my nose. I plucked it from the air, about an inch from my face, and placed it on the table. Couldn't these people see that I was in tune with the universe? It was as plain as the moon in the sky. Fortunately, the objects were moving in slow motion. Oh, I've lost my place, what did we say? Fortunately, the objects were moving in so slow motion, so I could play with these lads all night. But it was becoming plain that they weren't going to play for long. They were beginning to boil. The scary thing was, I had no fear. You see, fear is useful. It works like a condom, protecting you from unwanted consequences. Why don't you put your hand in a fire or try to stop a train with your face? Because you're a scaredy cat daren't even wear a hat and have a healthy, normal fear to protect you from fire, trains, heights and toddlers with golf clubs. No matter how I tried to work it out in my head, the layout and maths didn't work. No chair and a table would help. Retreat or get battered, simple. Fear was starting to kick in, which was good. The place was empty. If there'd been more people in, I could have gone coward kamikaze, safe in the knowledge that it'd get broken up before they had time, before I got seriously battered. But here and now, the skins would have time and space to fully express themselves on my young, ever so pretty face and take the beating to its unconscious conclusion. I had no chance whatsoever. Unless I moved, and quickly, I was more likely to shack Tutankhamun than leave the establishment without the assistance of 2 people and a stretcher. I didn't read very much in my teenage years, but happened at the time to be halfway through The Lord of the Rings. I'd ration myself to 20 pages a night to be able to savour every page. I read slowly and sipped at cup soups with the newly introduced and ever so continental croutons. Those little fellas had faced hordes of orcs, and I was seriously considering hiding around the corner from a handful of skinheads. Sad fuck. There were huge themes going on here. Freedom, a battle between good and evil, the power of the individual, Mordor to conquer. I couldn't fail at the first test. How bizarre. I was on my way to a Frodo Baggins-inspired kicking. Mick, it's not real, it's a fiction. Tell that to the walking trees and the whispering grass. Mick, I'm telling you, it's not real, it's a fiction. Ah, but I must tread the path of righteousness, sword of justice in my hand. Mick, you haven't got a sword, you've got an eyeliner. No sword. There are 6 skinheads who are getting more and more pissed off and bold. You need to move round the corner, away from them. I am a free man and I cannot hide from oppression wherever I find it. Shut the fuck up, Tit, and get around the corner. Mick, think telephone box with a polar bear in it. Yes, you have the right to use the phone, but you really need to make the call. Polar bear. Shh. You mean the great albino badger, obviously. Mick, you're missing the point. Point. You've always got a bloody point. As time was slow and I was completely in tune with the hum at the core of the world, this whole episode lasted, in your agreed Earth time, about 45 to 70 seconds. Like a librarian trying to decide whether to recommend Dickens or Austen and getting distracted by Orwell, there were just too many factors to facilitate a quick decision. In reality, I kept slipping off into psilocybin thought dreams. Out of the corner of my eye, speed burst through the bubble and into action faster than fast. The real world suddenly ripped through my trip in an explosion of high-tempo, real-time violence. No fake slow motion in reality. There was a skinhead shielding his nose with blood oozing through his fingers. The next to rise was being helped to his feet by an anvil strapped to a rocket of a right hand. The third was on his way to fly down the stairs. Now, I liked the flying down the stairs dream, and I really hoped he enjoyed it. The DJ returned to their table and gracefully swept out his arms like a matador who'd just finished a bull. The skins at the table stood as one, floated in the air as their feet went round and round, and Tom and Jerry speed ran down the stairs. The DJ didn't look up, just altered his hair and minced back to the decks. Who was that man? I didn't have a chance to thank him. I didn't even know his name. Well, I did, he hadn't changed it or anything. I raised my eyebrows, or rather they raised themselves, and thought, God, there was no need for that. I had it all covered. Mushrooms well and truly back in control, I slowly sucked on my vodka and orange, still in command of everything around me.